It's really unbelievable what we're seeing out in California right now, these wildfires in LA. I mean, it's
It's
January.
the middle of winter.
You just don't expect to see this.
Yeah.
Just look at these pictures. It's just horrifying. Pacific Palisades, Brentwood.
$1 million homes,
Yeah.
just gone.
It looks like an apocalypse. You know, when we do these deep dives, we always try to, cut through the noise and figure out the real story, the why behind these major events.
Yeah, cut through all the media hype and the political spin.
Right, exactly.
mean-
And I think this is one where we really need to do that. I mean, the scale of this thing, it's just massive. And what's really striking is how it's not just about burned trees or whatever.
All right.
It's about people. It's about lives totally upended.
Yeah, the human cost is just immense. I mean, at least 24 confirmed deaths, they're saying, and countless people still missing.
Wow.
Over 100,000 people have been displaced from their homes. We're talking entire communities uprooted. It's just staggering.
And then on top of all that, you look at the economic fallout. You're predicting it's going to exceed $50 billion.
$50 billion, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around a number like that.
Yeah, $50 billion. That's like, what does that even mean for people like us? Like, how does that actually play out?
Well, it's going to be a ripple effect for sure. Like,
Okay.
you think about insurance premiums, those are probably going to skyrocket. Property values in the affected areas are going to plummet.
Oh, yeah.
And even just like the cost of goods and services, businesses are struggling to recover, so prices go up. It impacts everyone.
It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
So let's just start with the basics. We're talking about two major fires here, right?
Yeah, the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire.
And they're both burning like right in the heart of LA.
I mean, when you think about LA, you think about Pacific Palisades right on the coast, beautiful beaches.
Movie stars?
Yeah, exactly. And now a lot of those multi-million-dollar homes are just piles of ash. And then the Eaton fire, that one's burning further inland, but it's still spreading like crazy. It's already reached Altadena, Pasadena. It's even threatening parts of the San Fernando Valley.
So just to give people a sense of the scale, how much land is burned so far?
Over 37,000 acres. And that's just a conservative estimate.
Wow. And over 1,800 structures destroyed. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You look at this level of destruction that makes you wonder, how did it get so bad? Like, what led to this?
It's a perfect storm of factors, really. I mean, California's been in this prolonged drought, right? And then we had an exceptionally dry winter on top of that, so you've got this tinderbox-like landscape just waiting to ignite. And then you add the Santa Ana winds to the mix. They're hot, they're dry, and they create these perfect conditions for fire to spread. And once these fires get going, the wind just pushes them along, like a freight train.
And it sounds like these winds are pretty common in Southern California.
Yeah, they're a regular occurrence, especially in the fall and winter months. The state's been experiencing a prolonged drought for several years now. And that means that the vegetation is incredibly dry. It's like tinder, just waiting for a spark. And when you combine that with the Santa Ana winds, well, you've got a recipe for disaster.
These winds are almost creating like mini fires everywhere they go.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And unfortunately, there's no shortage of potential ignition sources in an urban area like LA. It could be anything from a downed power line to a discarded cigarette.
And then once one of these fires gets started, it just spreads like wildfire.
Unintended.
Well, exactly. And I think this is where the conversation starts to get even more interesting. Because, I'm looking at these headlines, and a lot of people are connecting these fires to climate change.
Yeah, and they're not wrong.
I mean, how much of this is just, bad luck, and how much of it is something bigger, something more systemic?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but I think it's safe to say that climate change is playing a role here. We've been seeing these longer, more intense droughts in California in recent years.
And hotter summers.
Yeah, and hotter summers. And that's creating these tinderbox conditions that make these megafires more likely. So you've got this massive displacement of people. They're scrambling to find shelter. They're worried about their loved ones. It's just chaos.
I saw some footage of the evacuation centers, and they're just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah. It's a logistical nightmare.
And then on top of all of that, you've got the economic fallout.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the lost homes, the lost businesses, the disruption to tourism, the impact on the entertainment industry.
Which is like the lifeblood of LA.
Exactly. I mean, this is going to have a ripple effect throughout the entire economy. And that kind of brings us to, what's the government doing about all this?
Yeah, I mean, Governor Newsom has already declared a state of emergency. He's mobilized the National Guard. He's even called these fires potentially the worst natural disaster in U.S. history.
And he's announced an investigation into California's water management practices.
What's that all about?
Well, for years, California has relied on this complex system of reservoirs and aqueducts to manage its water resources.
But it sounds like that system might not be working so well anymore.
Yeah, I mean, with the drought and climate change, the state's water supply is becoming increasingly unpredictable, and there are a lot of questions about whether the current system is sustainable in the long term.
So what are the alternatives?
Well, there are a lot of different ideas out there. Some people are talking about building new dams, others are talking about desalination plants. There's also a lot of interest in conservation and water recycling, but there are no easy answers.
It sounds like this is going to be a very complex and contentious issue.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about water rights, you're talking about environmental impacts, you're talking about billions of dollars. It's a political minefield.
So what do you think? What's the solution here?
Well, I don't think there's any one single solution. It's going to require a multifaceted approach. We need to look at everything from conservation to infrastructure to new technologies.
And it sounds like we need to start thinking about these things now before it's too late.
Exactly. We can't just wait for the next disaster to happen. We need to be proactive.
Well, on that note, I think we should probably wrap things up. But before we go, I just want to say that it's been really inspiring to see the way the communities have come together in the face of this tragedy.
Yeah, people are helping each other out, they're donating supplies, they're volunteering their time. It's really heartwarming.
It just goes to show that even in the darkest of times, there's still hope.
Yeah, there's still hope. And I think that's what we need to hold on to. We need to remember that we're all in this together, and we need to work together to create a better future. And I think this whole disaster brings up a question. How does this change things moving forward? Not just in California, but everywhere. Is this the wake-up call we needed to finally start taking climate change seriously?
Yeah, that's something to think about. And maybe that's something we can explore in our next deep dive.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks for joining us today. Stay safe out there, everyone.